Welcome to So Much Fun. I'm Colleen Murphy and I teach sewing. I've been teaching sewing for about 25 years, and through the years I have used lots of machines, different brands, and I've had people ask me my opinion on those brands. So I'm going to talk about them today, and I am not representing any company. And so I'm not selling anything, but I'm just talking about my experience with the machines. But I also want to talk about Sergers. So let's begin with the Sergers. You know, I have a classroom, and at one point I had 5 Sergers, so I could have one for each student. Today I only have 3 because I rarely have a need to have more than 1 or 2 people using the Serger at the same time. The brands I have currently are the Baby Lock, the Bernina, and the Janome. It's called Janome CompuLock. I bought the CompuLock probably, I'd say over 20 years ago, and it's still working. Now, the problem with the CompuLock is every time I turn it on, I do have to adjust the tension settings. It's not a big deal for me, but I just know I have to do that. It's had that tension issue from the very beginning. In fact, the dealer I bought it from, they're no longer in business. They actually sent the machine back to the factory to see if they could get it to work automatically, and it came back and it still had the same problem. But I do like the CompuLock. The stitch, when you get the tension settings correct, makes a beautiful stitch. One other problem with it is it's a 5-thread serger, and 5-thread sergers should be able to do a cover stitch. I have tried to set it up for a cover stitch and I've never been able to get it to work right. So I just use it as a 4-thread serger, and that's okay with me because I have other sergers. So I'm not solely dependent on that CompuLock for cover stitch. I have a separate machine that is called a cover stitch machine. It does a cover stitch and chain stitch. It's a Bernina. And with that, I have a love-hate relationship. When things go smoothly, I'm crazy about it. When they don't, I don't like it. And so with the cover stitch machine, I never know from project to project if it's going to do a good job or if it's not going to do a good job. And I think after all these years, I have finally figured out that I need to use the washable solvay with the fabric to help get that stitch just the way I want it. So, you know, it's got its issues. But anyway, when you buy machines, especially sergers, you have to have a lot of patience and a lot of determination in terms of working with your machine and getting it to perform the way you need it to do. You know, I think people, especially when they're new to sewing, you know, they think, well, you just sit down, turn on the machine, and you're ready to go. Well, with serging, that's not necessarily the case. You have to make adjustments to the tension many times because of the different types of fabric you're using. So that's just to be expected, that it's not always going to be just exactly the way you want it when you turn that on. You've got to consider what fabric you are using and whether or not you need to change the tension settings. There are 2 things about sergers: learning how to thread it and knowing how to make the tension adjustments. So when I first started out back in the 80s with my first Bernina serger, it took me quite a while to figure it out, but I finally did, and I've never had problems as far as threading. In fact, I prefer to do the threading by tying it on. We call it the tie-on method. Than I do with like with my Baby Lock. It has this self-threading feature, and I do use it occasionally, but not very often. Most of the time, I just tie on the threads, and I'm not going to demonstrate any of this. I'm just talking about the machines today. So of the 3 machines, Baby Lock, Bernina, and the Janome, the Baby Lock is my favorite. It's the one that is the most reliable and requires little adjustment, if any. And so with it, I only have one, if you want to call it criticism, and that is the fact that I can't open the left side of the machine. So when I want to clean it out, I can't use compressed air. I can do so with the Bernina and the Janome, but I cannot with the Baby Lock. So I never feel like I really get it clean, but that's just part of that machine. As far as performance, it's great. And I have recently started using it for the rolled hem stitch. I used to have another machine that I had designated just for the rolled hem because it did such a great job. But there were other things about it I didn't really care for. So I had a student who was very interested in the machine, and I sold it to her. Once I learned that the Baby Lock, without very much work, if you want to call it work, I could have set it up for the rolled hem, and it did a great job. So that's why now I'm just down to 3 sergers. The Bernina 1150 is my least favorite, and my biggest criticism of it is the speed. It's very difficult to maintain a steady speed, and it wants to go much faster than new students can handle. They are intimidated by it because when they just put the slightest bit of pressure on the foot pedal, it tends to go very fast. And for them, that's a problem. For an experienced sewist, you wouldn't have an issue with it. But the speed is something that I think is not easy to maintain a good speed on the Bernina. And then when you have an issue like with the lower looper thread breaking, it's more awkward getting that re-threaded than it is with Baby Lock. Actually, I can't ever remember the lower looper thread breaking on the Baby Lock. But anyway, it's a more traditional threading system, I would say, the Bernina 1150 is, than the Baby Lock. It's the Baby Lock Imagine. Now, today, you can get a serger, a new serger, for about $300. It used to be $200, but now it's up to $300. And really, that's not bad, because when they first came out on the market back in the 80s, they were $1,000, and they didn't have all the features that they have today. Now, you can buy high-end sergers, and they run up into the thousands, $8,000, $10,000. I wouldn't buy one because really, what do you want it for? You have to think about that. Why do you want a serger? And if you're really into clothing design or clothing construction, you should get a serger. It really does a nice job finishing the edge of your fabric. And a sewing machine, I have yet to find one that really can do what a serger can do. So if your interest, though, is in quilting or home decor, I don't know that you really need a serger. So it's what you're doing that determines what kind of equipment you need. But hopefully, in talking about the sergers, you might get a better idea of what you want to think about when you're buying one. You always want to try out the machines and see what they're like, if you can control the speed, if they're easy to thread. I know the higher end sergers are all like self-threading, and that's really the looper threads. Personally, I don't think it's that big of a deal, and it's worth the extra money. I think you can get a basic serger, like I said earlier, for $300, or maybe you can even get a used one for less than that. But you really don't have to invest thousands of dollars for sergers. I hope this video has been helpful to you when you're thinking about purchasing a serger, as to what features you want to look for. And I always recommend that you test them out first, see what it feels like, how difficult it is to run the machine, and just in general, get a good feel for the machine before you make that purchase. Please check back with me because I'm going to do another video on sewing machines. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe to my channel and have so much fun.